All right. Well, welcome to the call tonight. I know that many of you were anticipating this call tonight. We had a good conversation last week, and I was asked to cover credit scores and how to fix, improve, and protect your credit. So that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. Is I'm going to be talking a little bit about credit scores and your credit. I'm going to go in probably deeper than the presentation because I didn't get everything done on the presentation that I wanted to, but it should suffice for tonight to cover the things that are important. So we're going to be talking about your credit score tonight, and the one thing that I want to start off with is just, really talking about what is the FICO score. So, you need to know some of the terminology and the language around credit scores. And so FICO is simply the name of a software company that kind of calculates your credit score. And this is a company that's based out of San Jose, California. And you guys know I travel out that way all the time. I'm always out in San Jose and in San Francisco. But the FICO score is a 3-digit number. And this is, it basically takes all of your information, your credit history, all of the different numbers that go into your credit report. It's a formula, and what it does is it summarizes all of the information about who you are, and then it comes up with a single number. And that number is the number that lenders are able to use to quickly assess your credit risk. So instead of them going line by line looking at your credit report and seeing what you've been late on or what you missed here or that, what they do is they use the software, the FICO score, and that software, it automatically calculates what your credit score is. And then they use that 3-digit number. Now, that's the FICO score. The next thing that we're going to talk about is, what is a good credit score? I mean, what does it mean to have a good score? So your credit score can be anywhere from 300 to 850. So that's the range of the credit score. And as you can see on the screen, if you're between 300 and 599, your credit score is really bad. You're in bad shape if it's under 600. If you're between 600 and 669, you've got an average credit score. Once you get above 669, you go into good. Once you get above 700, you become great. And then to get to 730 up to 850, you become excellent. And, from what I hear, it's almost impossible to get an 850. It's almost impossible to have an 850, just the way that the software calculates things. But you can definitely get in that 700 to 850 range. So you can get in that great to excellent range. And I'm going to show you tonight some things that play into you having great to excellent credit. So let's talk about some of those things here. The first thing that you guys ought to know is that there are 3 different reporting agencies. And these are the 3 major credit reporting agencies. It's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And here's what I want you to know about these companies. First of all, what they do is they collect and then they maintain that information that forms your credit history. So all of your lenders, people that you borrow money from, credit card companies, mortgage companies, banks, they all send in your credit history to these credit reporting agencies, okay? And so these credit reporting agencies are nothing more than gathering places. It's just a place for them to gather your credit, your history. These credit agencies are not run by the government. They are for profit, and they're private companies. So you guys need to understand this. They are private companies. They're not run by the government. They're for-profit companies. And basically what they do is they gather all this information, and then they turn around and they send the information back to the lenders. Now, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, they do not share their information with each other. So that's why you have to pull all 3 credit reports and pull all 3 credit scores from these companies, because you're going to have different credit numbers for all 3. And sometimes what a lending institution will do is they'll pull all 3, and then they will go off for the credit score that's in the middle. So you want to know what your credit scores are for all 3 of these, okay? And so a credit report is different from a credit score. Now, you can get your free report every year or when you are denied credit. A credit score is something that you're going to have to pay for to find out what your credit score is. Now, there's a commercial out there, and there's a website out there called Karma. I think it's called Karma, credit score, or Karma something. If you guys go out and do a search on Google for Karma, they tell you that they'll give you a free credit score. They'll give you your credit number. Now, they are pretty good at giving you a ballpark average or a ballpark figure, but it's not the same as Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, okay? So what you want to do is you want to go out and get a service that will give you your 3 credit scores so that you know where you're starting, and so that you can use that as a starting point to where you need to go, okay? So don't try to go the cheap route and just do Credit Karma and just get a free credit score and use that. That's not going to give you the exact credit score that you have from these 3 agencies, okay? So you will have to pay to get a credit score. You don't have to pay to get your credit report. You get 1 free credit report per year. The company that I got my credit score from, they provide me with the credit report as part of the service. So I don't have to pull a free credit report once a year. It's automatically a part of the service that I've applied for. Now, when we look at our credit report, there are many different things that are on our credit report, and a lot of times people say, well, how long does it stay on my credit report? On average, what you're going to be looking at is 7 years. Okay. Now, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy can stay on there as long as 10 years. But even a foreclosure can roll off in 7 years. So 7 is the magic number for most people. The other thing that you need to understand is that the older your late payments are, the less effect they have on your credit. So let's just say that you have a collections on your account that's 5 years old. It has less weight on your account than a collection that's 5 months old. The older it gets, the weaker the negative impact is on your credit, okay? So you want to know that as well. The older your credit, your negative stuff is on your credit, the weaker the impact is. And a lot of times what you want to do is you want to build some heavier credit on the front end and let some of that old negativity sort of fall off on the back end. Now, one of the things that you do need to know is that if you have any collections on your credit report, that are old, you need to see if you can pay those off. Because when you pay those off, they'll make a huge difference in changing your credit report, okay? Now, what I typically will advise people is to do what we call a debt settlement plan. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on in this process. But a debt settlement basically says, hey, listen, I owe you, let's just say $4,000. But if you will take $2,000 or $2,500 today, I'll pay it off today if you'll just accept it. Okay. A lot of companies will do a settlement with you. You just have to ask. A good settlement is anywhere between 50 to 55 cents on the dollar. That would be a really great settlement that you could do. So I've done settlements with banks and with credit card companies. I did a settlement, and I just said, hey, I got the cash I'm getting, I told them that I was getting the cash from a relative, and if I could get half of it, as a settlement, I would just pay it off. And so I was able to get that taken care of. Now, typically what you want to do when you're doing a settlement, you want to negotiate with them not only the amount that you're settling for, but you want to negotiate that they will mark your credit as paid in full. Paid in full. And you want to get that in writing before you do that settlement. Before you send any money to them, you get a settlement, you want to get that in writing. You want to get in writing that they will mark it as paid in full. And oftentimes they'll do that. Sometimes they won't, but sometimes they will. Okay? So we'll talk a little bit more about collections as we go on, but 7 years is the time frame that it legally has to stay on there. And like I was telling you guys last week, on my credit report, there were some things on my credit report that were true. And so I just felt like there was nothing that I could do about it except wait 7 years. That's what I thought. Wait 7 years. But again, as I told you last week, they have to prove that the debt is yours. They have to prove that you were late on that debt. And so a lot of times you can dispute, and if they can't prove it, it comes off before 7 years. And so if you're at a point where you got something on your credit report that's 5 years old, you might want to go ahead and dispute it, because maybe they don't have the records 5 years later. That's something that you might want to dispute and see, okay? All right, so this is really important because this screen is going to talk about calculating your credit score. What are the things that go into the credit score itself? And so I'm going to show you that. I'm going to talk about each piece of this, and I'm going to talk about what you can do and help yourself with your credit score. So 35% is your payment history. That's the largest chunk. The next largest chunk is 30% of debt and available credit. This is called credit utilization, or you might hear people call it debt to income ratio. We'll talk about that. 15% has to do with how long you had credit. So if you got a long credit history will give you more points than a short credit history. 10% is involved with what type of credit you have. We'll talk about the different types of credits that's out there. And then another 10% is the frequency of you applying for credit. Okay? If you apply for credit often and frequently enough, it will actually make your score go down. It'll make your score lower. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover each one of these areas so that we can talk about some of the things that you can actually do in those areas. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the 35%. The 35% is your payment history. This is what determines, your credit. And this is the largest factor of your credit score, is how well have you been paying your bills on time. So here's what I want to say. Pay your bills on time. Now, you might be saying, well, I know that. I'm already in trouble. Now, I haven't paid them on time, so I'm in trouble. So what I want to say is that going forward, pay your bills on time. If you can pay your bills on time, start doing that. The next thing that I want to say is start paying for things with cash. If you're late and you got a bad credit report, the one thing that you want to do is you want to at least put something in the bucket to stop that hole. You want to put something to cover that hole that's in your bucket. And the way that you do that is stop putting stuff on credit. Don't get things on credit. Start paying for things with cash. Get into the habit of paying for things with cash. Okay? So we want to be mindful of our payment history. Again, we want to pay our bills on time. And let me just say this as well. You may have to contact your creditors and kind of negotiate payments with your creditors. So let's just say that you contact your creditor, and last week I told you that you can negotiate with your creditor and say, hey, listen, I just can't pay this. I can't pay $150 a month on this bill. But what I can do is I can pay $75 a month. If you negotiate paying that $75 and your creditor allows you to negotiate that $75 payment, then you would start paying that $75 and it would not negatively affect your credit because you and your creditor have renegotiated your terms, okay? So make sure that you go back to your creditor and see if you can negotiate your payment to be a lesser amount. You still want to pay on a monthly basis, but you want to pay less, okay? Now here's the other thing. Let's just say that you have a lot of debt and you got a lot of different creditors. You want to go and negotiate with all of your creditors. The ones that are willing to work with you, you want to work with them. The ones that are not willing to work with you, well, they might have to be on the back end, and they might be the ones that don't actually get paid until you're able to do so. Here's the reason why you want to do that. I would rather you have, let's just say that you have 10 different debts that's out there. I would rather you negotiate and get 7 of them to agree, 3 of them don't agree. I would rather you pay the 7 and not pay the 3 than sitting there trying to juggle and now you're late with all of them. Does that make sense? That has to make sense to you. You want to get to the point where, hey, listen, if I'm going to be late on a creditor, let me just be late on this one creditor. Let me not be late on all of them. Let me not worry about because this one calls me the most. Let me go ahead and negotiate with my creditors. Let me figure out who's going to get paid, and I'm going to pay them on a consistent basis. And these 3 over here, I didn't have the money to pay them anyway, so those 3 are going to be the ones that's going to be negatively affected on my credit versus me trying to pay everybody and be late on all of them, on all my creditors, okay? So that's something that you need to start thinking about when you're, looking at who you're going to pay and how you're going to pay your creditors, okay? Let me do this because I'm hearing a little bit of background noise in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute out the background. All right. So that's your payment history, okay? And hopefully, if you got questions, I want you to write down your questions because I'm going to open up the lines for any of your questions. But I want to make sure that you understand that payment history, what I just said. I would rather you be late on 1 or 2 creditors than trying to pay everybody. In 1 month, you pay one creditor. The next month, you pay another creditor. And then I go look at your credit report, and you've been late on all your creditors. I would rather you be late consistently on just a few creditors and be on time with the rest of your creditors than trying to just pay people and be late on all of them. All right, so let's take a look at the next thing that you need to be looking at. The next thing that I want to talk about is what we call debt to income ratio or credit utilization. Now, 30% of your credit is determined by this. So we just left 35% of our credit determined by our credit history. And in many cases, most of you are not going to be able to do too much about your credit history. All you can do with your credit history is just start today and say, I'm going to start trying to pay my debtors on time. I'm going to try to pay my debt on time starting today because I can't go back and do anything about the past. But now this debt and available credit, this is 30%. So this is a huge number. So we can do something about this. So what this basically means is the more credit that you use, the lower your score drops. So with my econ, we're teaching people debt elimination. So as you're paying down your debt, your credit score should go up naturally because your credit to income ratio is being leveled out. So there's a couple of ways that you can actually level out your debt to income ratio. So here's what I mean by that. if you have a $1,000 credit card and you go out and put $900 on that credit card, your debt ratio on that credit card is 90%. You've used up 90% of your available credit. And what you want to do is you want to keep your available credit under 30%. So on a $1,000 credit card, you never really want to go over $300. That's keeping your credit utilization down at a reasonable rate. And if you can get it down to about 20%, you're even better. And what they say is that those people that have the greatest credit, they have their debt ratio at about 7%. 7%. So on a $1,000 credit card, they would have $70, on that credit card. And so you're probably saying to yourself, what's the use of doing it that way? That's just the way the credit score works. Okay, you don't want to you want to use your credit card so that you can get that credit history, but you want to keep your debt to income ratio as low as possible. And if you can put something on your credit card, pay it off the next month, that's a great spot to be in. Okay. Now, another way to lower your credit card ratio is to increase your credit limit. So let's say I have a $1,000 credit card and I have $500 that I put on that credit card. $500 on a $1,000 credit card means that I'm at 50% credit utilization. So what I do is I call the credit card company and I say, hey, can you raise my credit limit to $2,000? And by them raising my credit limit to $2,000, now my credit ratio is 25%. I still got the $500 on the credit card, but they raised my credit limit and it brought my credit ratio down to 25%. So now I'm in that 25% credit utilization sweet spot, and that keeps my credit score going up instead of going down. Okay? So I want to make sure that you guys understand that. Also at this point in time is if you've got some debt that's out there and you can negotiate a settlement, this is a good time to negotiate a settlement, especially on debt that you just haven't paid in a long time and you just want to kind of get rid of it. You can oftentimes call them up and say, hey, I want to give you 50 cents on the dollar, 55 cents on the dollar to get rid of this debt because I'm still struggling. Don't let them know you got all the money to pay it. I'm still struggling, but I want to get this taken care of. Can we do a settlement? And by doing a settlement, you're now knocking off some of that debt. Okay? So this is debt and available credit, and it's worth 30% on your credit score. So this is something that you can control. The more that you pay down your debt, the more that you get out of debt, the higher your credit score should go because you're now lowering your credit utilization. All right, that's credit utilization. Next thing is the length of time that you've had credit. That's 15% of your credit is determined by the length of time that you've had credit. Now, here's another area that you can't really do a whole lot about. Like right now, it is what it is. Whatever credit I've had for the years that I've had it, it is what it is. So what you want to do is, a lot of people go drastic and they say, I'm getting out of debt. And they cut up their cards and they call and they cancel their cards. You don't want to do that because by canceling your account, you have just shortened the length of your credit history. So here's what I tell people to do. It's okay for you to cut the cards up. Just don't call and cancel them. See, Bank of America does not know whether or not you cut its card up. But it does know when you call them and you cancel the card. So just cut the cards up. If you think that you got a bad habit and you're fiending and you got to use the credit card, go ahead and cut the card up. But don't call Bank of America and cancel the card. The other thing that you can do, this is a trick that a lot of people use with their kids when their kids are young and the kids don't have any credit. You could actually have someone place you as an authorized user on their credit card. And now you will get the same credit history as that person who has that credit card. But now you got to find somebody that's willing to do that. And you want to find somebody with good credit who has a credit card that has a long length of history on it. So, for example, I have an American Express. My American Express I've had for over 10 years. Never been late on it. Just great. I mean, I just use that when I travel. And when I get back off the road, my company usually pays me for all my travel expenses, and then I pay the card off. So I've always done that for the last 10 years. I can put my daughter on my card as an authorized user, and as an authorized user of that American Express card, she now also gets the credit history that comes along with that card. Now, does that mean I have to go get her a card? No. I can just make her an authorized user. I can have them send me the card, and then I keep the card. So she never gets the card, so she won't use it or spend it, but she can get the credit history behind that. And that's the only way that you can go out and create a length of time with a credit card or with credit. That's the only way that you can do it, okay? But if you currently have credit, do not cancel any of your cards, because that length of time, even if you're late on those cards, don't cancel it, because the credit history and the length of time that you had that is very important to your credit score. All right. Now let's talk about the type of credit that you have. So the type of credit that you have is equally as important. There are many different types of credit. There's mortgages, there's installment loans, there's automobile loans, there's student loans, there's credit card debt, unsecured credit, and secured credit. So let's talk about unsecured credit. Unsecured credit is credit card debt. And here's what that means. If you go out and you go to Longhorn Steakhouse and you bring the whole team and you swipe $300 on that credit card, everybody eats good that night, and you don't pay that bill, the credit card company can't come back and get what that money was spent on. They can't come back and get that meal. That meal is gone forever. That's called unsecured debt. Now, let's talk about secured debt. Secured debt would be something like a car. You go get an automobile loan. If you don't pay your car note, what do? They come and get the car, because there's collateral that's there that's attached to that car. So there's collateral there. Same thing with your home. So what you want to do is you want to have a mixture or a variety of different types of credit. You actually get 10% of your credit score is determined based on the variety of credit that you have. If all you have is credit cards and you don't have any other type of debt, then you may want to go out and actually get what we call a secured bank loan. Let me explain that. And it doesn't matter if you have bad credit. If you've got this bad credit that's just tore up, remember we were talking about starting an emergency fund? Well, what you can do is you can go out and say, let's say you saved up $1,000. You can go to the bank and put that $1,000 in a CD. Now, this is the only time that I would ever tell you to buy a CD. But you could put that $1,000 in a CD, and then you could ask the bank if you could borrow $1,000 and use your $1,000 CD as collateral. Basically, what you're asking the bank to do is, hey, listen, I need to build my credit. Here's a $1,000 CD that you're holding. Give me a loan for $1,000. You're guaranteed your $1,000 because you're holding my $1,000 CD, and I will pay this $1,000 over a period of time so that I can reestablish credit. That's called a secured bank loan, and it's secured by the CD that you have. Okay, you can do that with $500. Go get a $500 CD, and then ask the bank if you can borrow against the CD. Typically, they'll let you borrow against the CD because they have the funds. So that's another way that you can start creating new credit. You can start establishing and creating new credit even if your credit is just horrible. because the bank has nothing to lose because they have the secured collateral, okay? So you want to get a variety of different types of credit if your credit isn't good, or you might be in a situation where your house is paid for, you got paid for a car, you don't have any student loans, but you just got a whole bunch of credit card debt or furniture debt with, furniture. You went to Rooms to Go and bought something and you got debt that way. Well, now you need to go get some of this secured credit, and a secured bank loan is one way of going about doing it. All right. The frequency of applying for credit. This is another 10%. What it basically means is that most people, when they get in trouble with their money, they start applying for credit, and they start applying for it with frequency. And so the credit score goes down because you've applied for all these different credit cards. Or maybe you want to go buy a new car, and you went and looked at 10 different lots, and at each lot they wanted to pull your credit. Don't do that. Don't have them pull your credit until you're for sure about the car that you want. Don't do that. Don't have them pull your credit 10 times because you went shopping looking for a car. Better yet, a lot of times what you want to do, this is when you've got good credit, is go to your credit union or go to your bank and get pre-approved for an amount for an automobile loan. And then that way you don't have to have your credit pulled because you've already been pre-approved by your credit union. And now you can just go out and start shopping for cars. And when they want to pull your credit, say, you don't need to pull my credit because I got the money available. So avoid applying for a lot of credit over a short period of time. You want to watch those. It's called credit inquiries on your credit report. So you want to watch your credit inquiries. When you pull your credit report to review it, take a look at those inquiries. Now, there's something called soft inquiries and hard inquiries. A soft inquiry is every so often, I told you guys I have an American Express card. Every so often, American Express would pull my credit. And that's called a soft inquiry, so it doesn't hurt my credit. But a hard inquiry is when I go to the dealership and I apply for financing at the dealership. They're going to pull my credit, and that's called a hard inquiry. So you want to be careful and mindful of your hard inquiries on your credit report. And in fact, those are things that you can dispute on your credit report. So you can say, you can send in a letter when you're pulling your credit report. You can send in a letter and you can dispute some of the hard inquiries. Those are pretty hard to determine. Those are pretty hard to for them to prove. Think about it. I go to 5 dealerships this weekend, and each dealership pulls my credit report, but I end up not buying a car from them. Are they going to keep that paperwork? Chances are they haven't kept that paperwork. And so that's a dispute that I can go ahead and file to remove some of those hard inquiries off of my credit report, because I know that inquiries count for 10% of my credit. Okay? So that's something that you can start looking at. So, the thing that we're doing here is we're actually taking a look at all the things that come into play when it comes to your credit report. Now, what I want to say is I want to say this. This is the last part of the slide. I'm going to go into the actual repairing of your credit. So basically, the first thing that you want to do is you want to order your credit report from all 3 agencies. If you go online and get your credit score, typically what they'll do is they'll provide you with the credit reports as a free service if you pay for getting your credit score. There's a lot of different ones that's out there. It will average anywhere from $25 to $30 a month for them to constantly provide you with your score. I've done that, and you want to do that because you want to see what your score is when you start this process, and then you want to see what it's going to be as you're working through the process. So, you want to be able to file your disputes. It takes about 30 days for everything to come back. 30 days later, you want to look at your credit score again and see if it's gone up, okay? So that was how I was able to determine that my credit score jumped 100 points in 30 days, okay? So you want to get your credit score, and you want to get your credit reports from all three credit agencies. Once you have your credit report from all three credit agencies, you are going to write a letter to each one of those agencies, and you're going to dispute the things that are on your credit report, okay? You're going to need, when you write that letter, you're going to need to send them 2 proofs of copy that you are who you say you are. So what I did is I scanned a copy of my light bill, and I scanned a copy of my driver's license, and included with my letter was a copy of my light bill and driver's license. So you need to include that, okay? Also, when you look at your credit report and you're disputing an item, you need to list the account number and the name that's on the credit report as the thing that you're disputing, okay? And there are different letters that are out there that you can find over the internet. I've got some letters. You can go to the library, get some books on credit repair, and they will have the letters that you can actually submit, okay? Once you do that, you then want to send this dispute to each credit agency. So you're going to have 3 credit agencies that you're going to be disputing. You're going to send a letter to all 3. All 3 of them need to contain your ID and a bank statement or a copy of a utility bill or something like that. Now, you got to be, I think it's TransUnion. One of them got kind of tricky on me because I went to the post office, and instead of me sticking it in the mailbox, I went to the counter. And I went to the counter because I did a certified signature mail. So what that basically means is that I wanted to make sure that they got my credit, that they got my letter. So they had to sign for it. So you go into the post office and you send your letter to the credit agencies by certified mail. So when I sent it by certified mail, I think it was TransUnion. I want to say TransUnion. TransUnion had changed their P.O. box. So the guy at the post office, he was entering the address, and he says, this address isn't coming up. It isn't coming up. So I had to come back home, get on the internet, and find out that TransUnion just recently changed their P.O. box. Now, why would they do that? I don't know, but they changed their P.O. box. So I had to draft the new letter with the new address on it. But you want to send that certified. Once you send that certified, you want to come home and you want to put on your Google Calendar 30 days from the time that you sent it. 30 days from the time that you sent it. And then you just sit back and you wait. Probably around the 2nd or 3rd week, you might start getting letters from your creditors, and they may send you letters that say, you know, hey, we're verifying this account, or whatever the case may be. Keep those letters. Within 30 days, you should have a response back from all of your credit reporting agencies. And hopefully, some of the things that you have disputed have not been able to be proven, and those things will come off. And that's when you take a look at your credit score again. And then once you do that, then the second letter that you send is a letter that says, so sometimes you're going to get a credit report and it's going to say that this account has been verified. And it's going to state it's not going to be removed from your credit. So then you have to send a second letter, and that second letter has to say something to the effect of who verified it and what's the proof that it was verified. So see, they have to provide you with proof. So you send a second letter addressing the items that did not come off your credit report, and now you're asking them to provide you with proof that it's been verified. Now this process could be a 6-month process. And every time you send your letters back to the credit card agencies or the credit agencies, reporting agencies, you want to send it certified. So it's going to cost you a little bit of money to get your credit right. because I think just to send 3 certified letters, might cost you somewhere around $18 or something like that. I think the certified letters is almost like $5 to $6 each. So it's going to cost you some money as you work on this to get your credit straightened out. Okay. Now, again, there are a lot of different letters that are out there that you can work on to work on your credit and get things straightened out. I'm not going to cover all of that tonight, but what I am going to do is I'm going to open the call up, and now I'm going to just open the call up for any questions that you guys might have. All right, the call is open. Are there any questions out there about what we talked about tonight as it relates to your credit?
Jim, this is Harry Page.
Mr. Page.
Didn't you say that those credit letters are on the My Econ website, right?
That's correct. That's correct. So if you have the Family Shield 360, you guys remember, I think it was last week that I showed you Family Shield 360. If you have Family Shield 360, you can find a copy of those letters in your Family Shield 360.
Yeah, okay. I remember you saying that.
Yeah, they're definitely there, and they're probably all over the web. I mean, if you do enough research on this, you can probably find those letters in other places. In fact, since last week, I went and got a book from the library, and the book is on credit repair, and there's many sample letters in the book as well. So there are resources out there for these letters.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions out there?
June, this is Jacqueline.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you? Oh, okay. What if there's something on your credit report and it's down there twice?
It's on there twice.
Yes.
On the same credit report?
Twice.
Okay.
Yes.
So you want to address that. You want to address with the credit agency, when you send your letter, you want to say that this item has been listed on my account twice, and I'm disputing the item. And not only am I disputing the item, but I'm also disputing the fact that it's been on there twice. Okay?
Okay.
So one thing that will happen is they're going to remove one of them because it shouldn't be listed there twice. You just want to make sure that it's the same account number. Okay, because sometimes you might have like student loans. A lot of people get confused with student loans because they might have one payment, and that one payment for the student loan is, $300. But when you really dig into the student loan, it's 2 different student loans from the same company, but one student loan is for $15,000, another one is for $20,000. Somehow they just combine the payment. You get one payment slip for $300. But when you go and look at the actual loan itself, there's actually 2 loans that's there. So when you look at your credit report for your student loan, it's going to show 2 loans. So make sure that you check the account number because the account number should be different. But if the account number is the same and is listed twice on your credit report, you definitely need to contact them about removing at least one of them, if not removing both of them, by disputing the issue altogether.
Okay. It is a student loan. This was my daughter's that
Right.
I co-signed for, and it is listed twice with 2 different amounts.
Yeah. So what that is it's probably, and that's why I said when you said it was listed twice, it just made me think of a student loan because, like I said, most student loans are multiple loans under one company, and what they usually do is they send you one bill, and the bill is for $300, but the reality is that bill is for 2 different loans. And like I said, if you look at your credit report and the account numbers are different, then that's what you have there. You have 2 different student loans, even though you're paying one. So, and this is really important. I'm glad that you brought this up because I have a coaching client that I'm working with, and she has the same situation. She only pays $300 a month, but it's 2 bills. And so when I looked at her student loan, one of her student loans has an interest rate of like 3%, and then another one of the student loans has an interest rate of 8%. So I'm teaching her the snowball debt principle, and she was like, well, how do I snowball my student loan? Because I only get one bill for my student loan every month. And I said, well, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to send a check in that's specific for that account number. Because I don't know why they do that with the student loans, but that's how I knew that. When you told me you had 2 of the same loans, I knew it was a student loan because that's the way they do it. I don't know why they do it that way, but that's the way that they do it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
June, wouldn't those be a subsidized and non-subsidized loan?
It could be. It could be. What you would have to do is you would have to log in. Usually the student loan will have a website that you can log in that will give you details about the loan itself. And when you log in, you'll probably see that it's 2 different loans. You'll see that it's 2 different amounts that you owe. You'll see that there's 2 different interest rates that are there. And like you said, one might be subsidized and one might be unsubsidized. But that's how you're going to figure out what's going on with that student loan. They're usually the only company that does it that way. Yeah. Did I hear somebody say something?
Yeah, June the Snowball.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, I just got on a call. I just came in, man. You going to record it?
Yeah, it's already been recorded. It's been recorded. And I'm also recording the Q&A session, because oftentimes the Q&A session is probably more valuable than the training itself, because people are asking specific questions.
All right, brother. Could you send it to me, because I'm a little tired. I'm going to be listening, but I'm a little tired.
Okay.
But,
I'll send it out to everybody tonight that's on the call.
Okay. Appreciate you.
Any other questions about your credit and about your credit report?
June, this is Janice, and this
Yes,
is
ma'am.
not a question.
Okay.
This is a statement. I think the information that you have provided, the teaching that you have provided this evening is very, very valuable. And I thank you so very much for taking your time to teach us. It means a lot. It helped get some of us out of to improve our credit history. Our score helped to improve that, and this meant a lot. So I thank you very much for that.
My pleasure. Anytime. A lot of people, I think all of us have made mistakes and have, blemishes on our credit. And, it's easy to just kind of push it off to the side and not think about it. But it's better to just go ahead and address it and start working on it, because if you don't work on it, it won't fix itself. And, if you guys go out there and work on it. One of the things that I want to make sure, and I'm going to back my slide up just a little bit, I wanted to make sure that you guys understood what I was talking about under the payment history. Here's what most people get in trouble. First of all, they've overextended themselves in debt, which means that at the end of the month, they owe more than what they got coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So you owe $2,000, but you only got $1,500 coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you're $500 short. And oftentimes what people do is they panic and they don't put together a plan. See, if you owe $2,000 and you only have $1,500 coming in, you got to already say that somebody ain't going to get paid. You just might as well just tell the truth at that point and say, I owe $2,000, I only got $1,500 coming in. Somebody's not going to get paid. See, that's just being truthful at that point. Somebody's not going to get paid. That's the first thing that you need to do. The second thing you need to do is say, what can I do to help everybody get paid? And the second thing would be to call your creditors and to negotiate all your creditors, see if your creditors can, cut what you owe them in half or by 70%. And if you can do that, then you might find a way that everybody can get paid because you renegotiated your agreements. That should be the second thing that you do. Now, if you are in a situation where you cannot renegotiate your agreement, because a creditor does not have to renegotiate with you, at that point, you then have to make the decision of who is not going to get paid. See, nobody wants to be real with you, but you're going to get to a point where you have to make the decision of who is not going to get paid. Whenever you make that decision of who's not going to get paid, make sure you pay everybody else, but you not pay that one or two creditors because you don't have the money. Then the one or two creditors that you don't pay them on a consistent basis. I don't want you not paying them this month, and then next month they call you and say you're 30 days behind, and now you pay them, and then the creditors that you did pay last month, now you're late with them. Because now what's going to happen on your credit report is you're going to be late on all these creditors. When if you had just chosen, these are the two that I'm going to be late on, and they're just not going to get paid, your credit's going to take a hit, but at least you only got two creditors that you've been late on instead of your whole credit report looking like you're late. And a lot of people get in that trouble, get in that spot. They get in that spot because, well, I'm trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. I'm 30 days late over here, so I'm gonna go pay them, and then I'm up on this one, and I'm gonna go do this, and before you know it, you got a bad credit mark on everybody.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a whole lot of sense, and I wish I had have known that when I was in that position. But since I know what to do now, I don't think I'll ever get there again. Now, there are some bills that I allowed to I could not pay them, so I didn't pay them. So when I got to the point where I could pay them, I start paying them again. Well, there's one bill that I'm almost completely, with the ones completely paid for, one of them that I couldn't pay for, I'm almost finished with that. So I'm going back to pick up another one. I'm going to call them and talk to them and tell them I'm going to start sending them a certain amount of money until I get them all marked down, get them out of the way. But I wish I knew before not to try to give everybody a piece of the pie. No matter how small it was, I was still trying to give everybody a piece of the pie, and it made my credit look bad. You're right, it did. So I wish I knew that when I was dealing with that at that time, because a lot of times you don't have enough, you got more bills than you have money. And if I had known that then, I would have known exactly what to do, and it wouldn't be so bad. I wouldn't have to repair so much, working on repairing my credit. But, yes, thank you for the information, and for those that all of us have had hard times at one time or another. So it's nice to have this information available.
Right.
So I thank you again.
And let me say this, here's what you guys got to also understand. Depending on how long you haven't paid, a debt.
Right.
See, at this point, let's just say that, you haven't paid a debt in a while. You just been late. They was calling you, and after a while, they just got tired of calling you, and it's just been on your credit report. At this point, if you're in that situation, now's the time to call them up and try to settle with them. Because oftentimes what happens is the original creditor will have a third-party collection agency will pay for your debt pennies on the dollar. Mm-hmm. So let's just say I owe the bank on a credit card, I owe them $5,000 on a credit card. A third-party collection agency might buy that $5,000 debt for $1,000. Okay? And then the way that the collection agency makes money is anything over $1,000 is profit for them. So now, let's just say that you're ready to start trying to get your credit back, and you now know that this debt ain't even with the same company that you actually borrowed the money from. It's with a collection agency. Right. Well, if it's with a collection agency, you already know the collection agency got your debt for pennies on the dollar. If it's already gone to a collection agency, the mark is already on your credit. Right. It's already there. So even if you paid it off, it's still already on your credit. So at this point, what you do is you call up that collection agency and say, hey, listen, I'm still struggling, but, you know, things are a little bit better. I got a little bit of money that I got from a gift or whatever. You don't tell them that, you know, everything is just fine and dandy. Because if you tell them it's fine and dandy, they want all of it. But you give them whatever your sob story is, but I got a little bit of money, and while I got this money in my hand, I want to try to pay somebody. I got a few people that I owe some money to, and I want to pay them, but I see that you've taken over the debt. I want to do a settlement with you. Now, you got to be able to negotiate. If you ain't good at negotiating, you might need to get somebody on the phone that can, because they ain't going to accept the first thing that you give them. And you just going to have to go back and forth with them. I want 50. I might hit them at 25, 30 cents on the dollar. I know they're not going to take 30 cents on the dollar, but I don't want to. I want to get to, if I could get to 50 cents on the dollar, then we got a good deal. So I might start at 30 cents on the dollar. So if I owe $1,000, I might tell them, hey, listen, I'll give you $300 today, and we can be done with this. They're going to say, no, we can't do $300. And we're going to negotiate back and forth, and I get the $450, $500, and they agree. That was where I wanted to be. I didn't have to pay the whole $1,000. I just had to pay the $500. Now, before I send them the $500, when you settle with a company like that, you make them send you a letter saying that they have agreed to the $500, and you ask them to send you a letter that's saying that they will mark your account as paid in full. Okay. Now, that second one might be a little hard because they try to play hardball. We can't do that. Well, I'll tell you what. I got another creditor, and see, this is what I always tell them. Y'all ain't the only ones I owe. So somebody going to take my deal today. I got $500 that I'm going to pay somebody today. Either you can get it and you can give me a letter that's saying that you'll take my $500 and that you'll mark my account as paid as in full, or I can call the next credit card company that I owe.
Okay. What if you've had a debt that's about 10 or 11 years old, and do you still have to pay those?
Absolutely not. So you have a 7-year period on most of your debt. Let me see if I can find it here. So any late payments, if it's over 7 years, then you can just write on your dispute that this debt payment is over 7 years. So it needs to come off my record. They don't even have to call the creditor. If it's over 7 years, and that's 7 years from the time that you stop paying. Okay. Right. So I got to make sure that that's clear. That's 7 years from the time that you stop paying. All right. Then at that point, you write into Equifax or TransUnion and say the last date that this credit was that I stopped paying was 7 years ago. According to the law, you have to remove anything that's 7 years or older.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Miss Jazz, you finished?
Yes, I am now, Noble.
Hey, baby, how you feel?
I'm doing fine. We know you're tired, so get your question in.
Yeah, I'm going to fall asleep, but just some good meat and potatoes, though. Okay. I see on this slide you got here in the 7 years and all that, but you got the bankruptcy, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. So you
Right.
said Chapter 7 is 10 years it stays on your credit, and Chapter
Yes.
13 is 7 years?
Yes. So
Huh?
yes, I'm saying that chapter 7 is 10 years because a chapter 7 wipes everything out. So a chapter 13 is a negotiation. Okay. So a chapter 13 is negotiation of payment. So you are negotiating your payments. And so once you have made that payment and negotiated those payments and started paying that down, paying it off, it's 7 years from that time.
So which one is better? Go ahead.
So see what you've done, and that's a good question, Noble. A chapter 7 basically says you're walking away from all your debts and you're not paying anything. What a chapter 13 is you're now renegotiating and paying a portion or whatever the agreement has become. So what you've done is you now made an agreement with your creditor. So now that you made the agreement with your creditor, you're back on terms with your creditor now. You're working on terms that's in agreement with your creditor. They can't hold that against you. So now that you made those terms and those agreements, your late payments or whatever is just like all the rest of them. It's 7 years because you've made an agreement with them. So that's the difference there between that chapter 7 and that chapter 13.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. What would you say, okay, when you say, okay, let's say the chapter 7, right? What would you say from your experience the significant amount of money that you would claim chapter 7?
Well, anytime you start looking at a bankruptcy, okay, with a bankruptcy, I see a lot of people that will say, well, I owe $5,000. I'm going to go file bankruptcy. I personally don't feel that $5,000 is worth filing bankruptcy over. Even if you don't have the money, $5,000 ain't a whole lot of money. I mean, all of us on this call could get $5,000 and pay something off. We could all pay $5,000 off if we needed to. It may not be all at the same time. It might not be as quick as others, but $5,000 isn't a whole lot. Now, when you start looking at bankruptcy, the thing that you want to do is somebody trying to come after your house, and you ain't got no other place to live and stay, but they trying to come take your house. Or they come trying to take your car, and that's your only source of mode of getting back and forth to work. That's when you want to look at bankruptcy, because, see, bankruptcy is a protection. It's going to protect you from being wiped out totally. Because, see, don't nobody want to be living on the streets. You don't want your kids in going to halfway houses. So if you get to that situation where your money is just real bad, and you don't even know if you're going to be able to have a roof over your head, you scared that somebody's going to take your car, and you trying to get back and forth to work or go, and even if you don't have work, you still got to go interview, then at that point you need to start looking at filing bankruptcy. Okay? Now, for me, if I'm going to file bankruptcy, bankruptcy is bankruptcy. If I'm going to file bankruptcy, I'm going to try to go for, and I'm going to just be honest, I'm going to go for the Chapter 7. Because the Chapter 7 wipes the slate clean. It just wipes it totally clean, and I just start all over again. But a Chapter 13, I still am negotiating with my creditors. I may not pay as much. I might owe $30,000 or $50,000, and my negotiation has me paying them, $25,000 over the next 5 or 6 years. I would just rather just start fresh if I could. Now, in some situations, depending on, you would have to see your bankruptcy attorney. In some situations, you may not qualify for the Chapter 7. So there are definitely rules to qualifying for Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. But no, I would not file bankruptcy over. For me to file bankruptcy, it would have to be, and this is just me. For me to file bankruptcy, it'd have to be $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 that I just can't get up under. And even then, I could probably pay $100,000 off. It would just have to be a situation where I ain't got no job, I haven't paid my mortgage, I have no other place to stay. I got kids and a wife, and the bank is threatening to kick me out of my house. That's when I'm gonna file bankruptcy.
All right, bro.
All right, good question. Any other question out there? Yes, Mr.
This
Petty.
is Harry. Yeah. I came across one time was I had a debt that I forgot about, and it was no activity on debt for a long time. Then out of the blue, I started getting people calling me, acting crazy on the phone, talking all kinds of nonsense. They're gonna do this to me and that, all kind of crazy stuff. So I started reading, and what I was finding out was that companies, they sell this debt in bundles to like what they call scavenger
Right.
companies. They buy debt to like almost nothing. And what they'll do is just try to threaten you to get the most money they can out of you. The
Right.
debt is uncollectible.
Right.
They know they're not collectible, but they sold it off. But they'll try to bully you into paying you a large amount. And the more money they get, the more commission these people who call you get.
Right. So, Harry, you bring up a great point, and I want to tell everybody on the call that your debt has a time limit to it. And the time limit on the collection is different for each state that you live in, okay? Your debt has a collection period, and after that period has expired, they can't legally collect on that debt anymore, okay? Now, it stays on your credit report 7 years, but the debt itself has a time period, and each state is different. So you'll have to go online and search on what's the time period for collecting debt in the state of Georgia or the time period for collecting debt in the state of South Carolina or whatever. But here's what will happen. As your debt gets closer to that time period of falling off where they cannot collect, they're making a last-ditch effort to contact you. And here's the thing that you got to be careful of. If they contact you about a debt that you owe, and you re-engage them in a conversation about that debt, that time period can start all over again from zero.
Thank you.
So what you have to do is when they call you about a debt that you ain't heard about in the last 4 or 5 years, and they call you about that debt, you got to pretend and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I think you got the wrong person. You're going to have to submit proof of the debt is mine. Okay? And what you do at that time, because you're right, they just sold a whole bunch of debt for pennies on the dollar to this scavenger company. The scavenger company does not have, in most cases, the scavenger company does not have any records that this debt is yours. They just bought all of this debt for, they bought a $1,000 debt and paid $5 for it. Because at that point, it's really pennies on the dollar. And they're just going to get on the phones and they're going to hammer the phones. They're going to try to scare you. They're going to do all kind of tactics just to get something. They may have bought $100,000 worth of debt for $1,000. So they're just hammering the phones and trying to make something. They'll get somebody that's scared that's going to send them something. They'll get somebody. But what you have to do is you have to stick to your guns and you have to be calm and you have to say, I'm not aware or I'm not familiar of this debt that you speak of. You need to provide proof of the debt that I actually owe the debt. And a matter of fact, I wish you don't call me anymore. Any further communication that you want to have, you can send me via mail. But don't call me anymore. I'm not aware of this particular debt. And then what I would do is I would turn right around when that happens. I would turn right around and I would do a dispute on my credit report for that particular debt because chances are they have no record of the debt. And if they don't have any record of the debt and can prove the debt, then they have to stop collecting or trying to collect, and they have to remove it from your credit report. So that's what happens when you get somebody calling you on an old debt that you ain't heard of in 3 years or 4 years. is because you're getting close to the expiration period of them being able to legally collect on that debt. And again, the expiration period is different for each state. Man, y'all asking some good questions tonight. I hope y'all learning something. I hope y'all enjoying this tonight. All right. Any other questions out there? Any other questions about this, about credit and debt and collection agencies? All right. Well, I will take that as no more questions that you guys have. This will be a 1 hour and 14-minute video that I will make available to everyone. You'll have this available to you. Let me go ahead and end the recording. I can stop recording right now.